Hey, wow. I wish I was somewhere warm and sunny, but I'm not. But I am Gert Marks, and we're coming to you live from the SSW office in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. Big welcome to all the attendees in the office tonight. It's wonderful to see you all, and also a warm welcome to all of our online viewers. Before we make a start, just quickly want to show off the SSW Rewards app. So those of you that don't have it yet, there will be a QR code on the screen right now. This will take you to the place where you can download the application. You use that to scan QR codes of SSW employees, QR codes at events like NDC conferences. And every time you scan a code, you get points. And every time you get points, you move up the leaderboard. And as you move up the leaderboard, you can win prizes. The application will notify you when you've won a prize. And yes, it's as simple as that. Now, we looked at Adam's news today, and we see that everything is AI. Everything is about models, and everything is about ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is great. We use it all the time here at SSW. We integrate it into solutions. We use it to build solutions. It's a wonderful tool to have and to use. But there's certain I'd say features of human intelligence that you just can't model. You just can't code it. You just can't create it in any other way. Some of these features are like common sense, emotional intelligence, and I guess physical interactions. And the only way you can talk about those things and you can, I guess, teach those things is by using a human being. And we are very lucky tonight. We've got a real human being here in the SSW office. His name is Andrew Murphy. He'll be talking about debugging difficult conversations. Welcome, Andrew.
Hello, everybody in the room, and hello, everybody on the stream. So, today we're going to be talking about difficult conversations. I want to start with a story about why difficult conversations are so important to me. I genuinely believe that the success that I've had in my life, whatever that is due to the difficult conversations that I've had. And the times when I've not maybe been as successful as I would have hoped are times when I haven't had the difficult conversations. So I've been in technology my entire career. I started when I was just out of university, and through a series of unfortunate circumstances, I ended up being a leader very, very early. And I say unfortunate because what 22-year-old knows how to be an employee, let alone be a leader of a team of 10 people? And I made a bunch of mistakes. One of the mistakes that I made very early on was a difficult conversation that I didn't have. I had a team, and it was a team of great people, but we needed to grow, we needed to expand, and so I hired somebody into my team. And I made a mistake that I'm sure you've all seen. Maybe those of you who are leaders, you've made this same mistake. I hired somebody who wasn't the right fit for the team. They may have been the best technologist, but they weren't the right individual. They weren't the right human for the team. I didn't recognize this until it was too late. And even when I did recognize it, I didn't solve it straight away. In fact, this person ended up being such a disruptive influence to my team that my best engineer quit. And she said the reason she quit was because of this new person I've hired. So I didn't have a difficult conversation with this person. I knew they were a disruptive influence. I knew it was causing a problem, but I didn't have the courage to talk to them. The second difficult conversation that shaped my career came very soon after that. This is when my boss called me into a room, sat me down, and said, "Andrew, what's your job?" When your boss brings you into a private meeting room and asks you the question, "What's your job?" you know this isn't going to be a fun, happy conversation. You know it's going to be a difficult conversation. Luckily for me, this could have ended up being a bad time. This could have ended up me being fired. This could have ended up me being somebody who was losing their job because they didn't know what they were doing. But luckily for me, it wasn't that. It was the time for my boss to take me under his wing, to become my coach, to become my mentor, and to teach me what it means to be a leader. And so that's really why difficult conversations are so important to me. That because I genuinely believe that the conversations you have and the conversations you don't have shape your career, shape your personal life, shape your life in general. And so that's why I put this talk together. So what are we going to be discussing? We're going to start with the what and why of difficult conversations. What are they? Why do we need to have them? We're going to go through a little model that I like to use to approach them, which is mindset and preparation. I'm an engineer, and so I like algorithms. And as much as humans are tricky and different and unique, there are algorithms we can use to make it a little bit more understandable the way we approach these problems. Then I'll go through some examples and a worksheet for you to take away, and then we'll end with some Q&A. So this is also a very important point for this evening. This is not a monologue. For those of you on stream, there is you can put questions and comments and suggestions into chat. For those of you in the room, there'll be a Q&A at the end. Please do take advantage of this. My job is not to stand here for 60 minutes and talk at you. My job is for you to learn and for you to get better. And the best way for you to do that is for you to interact. So please, this is not a application. This is a real, true statement. Please do engage. Yeah. So who am I? Who's Andrew Murphy? Well, this is the best way I could find of putting my life on a single slide. I am a long-term father of a flock of chooks, or as we call them in England, chickens. Short-term father of a flock of humans, or as we call them in England, financial burdens. And my entire life has been about travel as much as I possibly can. I love travel, I enjoy travel, and I like seeing the world, which is why I'm in Australia, even though I was born in the UK. From a professional point of view, I've been an engineer for about 20 years at this point. Love writing code, started writing code when I was a young child, enjoy it so much. Being an engineer is just what I live and breathe. But like I said, I've also been in engineering leadership a very long time. And I've been taking the skills that I've learned from engineering leadership and been teaching and training people what it means to be an engineering leader for about the last 5 years, on and off. And now, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, now full-time with something called Tech Leaders Launchpad. So let's start this evening with a question. What are difficult conversations? If you were to put yourself on this stage with me and ask the question, what are difficult conversations? What are some of the answers you think people might say? What would you say if I asked you the question, what's a difficult conversation? If you want to put an answer in the stream, if somebody in the room wants to shout out, I'll repeat your answer. Come on, somebody, remember that second slide. Interruptions are expected. This is not a monologue. How to do something. Say more.
What to do.
Sure, that's a great example of a difficult conversation. I don't know what to do. Can you tell me what to do? That could be a difficult conversation. Having the courage to ask somebody for help is a difficult conversation. Anybody else? Zach?
I think
Sure.
my expected time.
Yeah. So Tadek was saying the conversation that could be an unexpected manner, unexpected place, unexpected direction of the conversation. Basically, there's a lot of uncertainty in it. Yeah, definitely. Last comment. Yep.
When you have it, awesome.
Oh. So the comment there was when you're not doing something fast enough. Can you give me a concrete example?
Example with your on-site craft. Oh, nicht. Gotcha.
So the comment there was if you're a consultant, say, and you're on site with a client, you're obviously charging yourself per hour, but maybe you're not producing the outcome and the result quickly enough for them. You've got to have a conversation with somebody. We're going to have an example that is exactly that example later on. So I love that. Last comment. Sorry? Salary negotiations. Perfect example. Who has negotiated their salary? Yes, this is something we all do at some point. Salary negotiations are a perfect example of difficult conversations. So there's this is a few different types of difficult conversation. Giving somebody feedback, doing a presentation, for me, this is a difficult conversation. You might not believe it. I'm an introvert, and yet I stand up on stage in front of people and give presentations. This is difficult for me. Influencing people, convincing them, asking for promotions, denying promotions, difficult conversation. Architectural decision-making, talking to your peers about what path you should take, what architecture you should build something with, is a difficult conversation. Interviewing somebody. Both sides, being interviewed and being an interviewer, are difficult conversations. So there's things in these that are common between all of them. What that is high stakes and high emotions. Every single one of these difficult conversations, there's a high stake on the outcome of it. And there are high emotions on the outcome of it. And so whenever you're thinking about something and you're going into a discussion with somebody and you want to ask yourself, should I remember this talk that Andrew gave at SSW? Think to yourself, is this going to be a high stakes discussion? Is this going to be a high emotions discussion? Because if the answer is yes, probably one you can use the talk tonight to become a little bit more confident at. So, second question of the evening. What happens if we don't have difficult conversations? Yes. Lower salary band. Yeah. I love that, because one of the things that a lot of people say when I ask that straight away is they say nothing happens. To which, yes, you're right. One of the things that can happen if we don't have difficult conversations is nothing happens. But one of the worst things that can happen if we don't have the difficult conversation is not only does things not happen, things can get worse. And that's a perfect example of where things can get worse. We might have in our mind where we want our salary to be, and it might not even get there. It might get even lower than that. So difficult conversations, if we don't have them, either nothing happens or things get worse. And I want to give you a story to illustrate this things get worse situation. So this car you see on the screen right now, this is my pride and joy, or this was my pride and joy. Like I said, when I lived in the UK, I loved travel. I went around everywhere. I went around Europe. I spent a lot of time in this vehicle. This Land Rover 110 300 TDI beast of a car. I'm not a car person. I'm genuinely not a car person. I don't care. But this is the only car I've ever had that walking past it made me smile. Just knowing I owned this car made me smile. And it's the one regret I have with moving to Australia. The one regret is that I didn't bring this with me. Anyway, that's just me commiserating myself. This Land Rover I took everywhere in Europe. On one particular occasion, a friend of mine and I were going around Central Europe. We were driving through France and going to Luxembourg and Germany. And we were about to set off on this journey. And I got to my Land Rover, and I do a pre-check when I go on a long car journey. If you're going on a multi-thousand-mile car journey, you don't just hop in the car and drive. You do a little bit of a pre-check. So I do my pre-check of my Land Rover, and I noticed on the floor a few drops of oil. Now, if you don't know anything about Land Rovers, you might think that's a really bad thing. For a Land Rover, it's not really. Land Rovers they're full of holes. They're more holes than car. And so a few drops of oil on a Land Rover are not necessarily a huge problem, but it was enough that it caused me a little bit of concern. And I looked at that and I thought, Beery. Beery is a Yorkshire saying, which I think the closest Australian is, she'll be all right. Like, Beery is the Yorkshire version of that. So I get in the car, start driving. Get to France. I'm driving down the freeway in France, and suddenly I just hear this. I think, I'll be fine. It's just a noise. I've got a stone stuck in the tyre. Something's just rubbing. It's a very rhythmic knocking noise. Be fine. So I keep driving. I hit Luxembourg. Driving down a freeway in Luxembourg. Car grinds to a halt. I'm on the side of the freeway in Luxembourg at 3 a.m. with a car that will not go forward. Luckily for me, my life seems to have a lot of luck in it. I have broken down a mile away from a Land Rover specialist garage. Very lucky. Not only that, this Land Rover specialist garage happened to have the exact part that I needed. For those of you who know anything about Land Rovers, I destroyed the transfer box. One of the gears had shattered, which had then cascaded and destroyed all the other gears in the transfer box. The entire transfer box was massacred. I went into this garage, explained the problem. They knew straight away what it was. They knew they had the part, but they also knew that they were the only place in 100 miles that had the exact part I needed, and that I had to buy that part from them, or I had to trailer my car back to the UK. Do you know how much I paid for that transfer box on the side of a freeway in Luxembourg? 12,000 euros. Yeah. Do you know how much it would have cost to fix the car if I'd have realized what the problem was when I saw the oil on the floor back in the UK? A couple of $100. Do you know how much it would have cost to fix the problem if I'd have stopped and taken it to a garage when I heard that first knocking noise in France? $1,000, $2,000. So, because I ignored the problem, because I kept on driving, because I pretended everything was going to be okay, I ended up spending more than the car was worth fixing it and having a very stressful time in the middle of the night on the side of the Luxembourg freeway. Why do I tell this story? What's this got to do with difficult conversations? Well, every part of this, you can analogize it to having a difficult conversation. We have these things where we know they're coming up. We sense them. We know when we're going to have potentially a conflict with somebody. We know when we need to influence somebody and change the way that they think about things. We know when we're going to have a performance review. We see these things in the future. If we ignore them, they don't get better, they get worse. And so the next time you know you've got a difficult conversation coming up in the future and you see it on the horizon and you think, she'll be all right. Remember me on the side of the Luxembourg freeway forking over my credit card for 12,000 euros. You do not want to be in that situation. Tackle the difficult conversations before they get worse. So before we get in the meat of what we're going to talk about tonight, I want to touch on this point. A lot of these difficult conversations, performance reviews, interviews, there can be this tendency that what we're trying to do by talking about them is to become comfortable with having them. If I'm going to give you some negative feedback, say, you might feel the tendency to go, I want to become comfortable with giving somebody negative feedback. If I'm going to, unfortunately, have to let somebody go, you might think I want to become comfortable with having to let them go. And that's not what we're going to talk about this evening. I don't want you to be comfortable doing that. I don't want you to feel comfortable telling somebody that their performance isn't good enough. I don't want you to feel comfortable telling your project manager that you're running late. Because if you feel comfortable doing that, what that means is you've disconnected your emotions from that other person. You've lost empathy for them. If I have to give you negative feedback and I'm comfortable giving you negative feedback, it means I don't care how you feel. I don't care how you respond and you react to that. I don't want you to get there. I don't want you to disconnect and not feel empathy. But what I do want, and the point of the talk this evening, is to make you be confident with having it. And so that difference between comfortable and confident is really important. Comfortable means you don't care how the other person feels. Confident means you might care, but you've done everything you can to make this go as well as possible, and you've prepared for it as well as possible. And so the difference between those two things, I want you to keep reminding yourself of. The moment you go into a difficult conversation feeling comfortable, I want you just to have a gut check and just go, have I stopped caring about the other person? Because that's not what I want you to do. Okay, so let's get into the meat of what we're going to talk about this evening. How do we actually solve difficult conversations? How do we approach them? How do we do them in the best possible way for everybody? The best possible way for us and the best possible way for the people we're talking to. The model I'm going to take you through is mindset and preparation. So mindset is the way you think about the situation, and then preparation, pretty obvious, the way you prepare for the difficult conversation. So mindset. If we're approaching anything in our professional or personal lives that has high stakes and high emotions, then we want to make sure that we're thinking about it in the best possible way that's going to be productive. We don't want to go into these things and be in a place where we don't have the courage. Because courage is the biggest thing that stops us having difficult conversations. We're worried about a few things. Such as, example to the room, what are some of the things we might be worried about if we're approaching a difficult conversation? What might challenge our courage to have a difficult conversation? Rejection, tell me more. In what way? Give me an example.
A number, so it's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so for the people on the stream, the answer was rejection. Say, for example, if you come up with an idea, people might not want that idea. They might not think it's a good idea. And so you might withdraw from that conversation for fear of your idea being rejected. And maybe your idea being rejected makes you feel like you've been rejected. Great example. What else? General fear and anxiety. Yeah, definitely. Where do you think that comes from? What's that underlying thing for that fear and anxiety? Yeah, lack of exposure and insecurity. Definitely there's an element of that. I think you're absolutely right. Yes.
ready.
I genuinely have done this talk about a dozen times, and you're the first person that said that, and I love that. So for those on the stream, the comment was developing a bit of a reputation for being a difficult person. That's great. Such a good point. Yeah.
Assumptions, all about the thing that reaction.
Yeah. So assumptions about how somebody else might react, and I guess the assumption there is they're going to react in a negative way, in a way that might not be conducive to a positive outcome, like those kinds of reactions. Yeah, definitely. Anybody else? No, cool. Yeah, I love all of these examples. They're all things that can stop us having the courage. There's one last thing that I just want to touch on, which is potentially underlying a lot of what we've talked about just now, which is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can be a really big thing about why people don't tackle difficult conversations. You might look at it and go, I'm not the right person to have this. Why am I? Like, why me? Why my idea? Why me? You know, why shouldn't it be Jessica? Why shouldn't it be John? Like, why is it me? This is a big thing in our industry, is imposter syndrome. Who suffers from imposter syndrome? Pretty much everybody in the room. Just put their hands up for those in the stream. It's true. It's a big thing in our industry. And so I do think there's a lot of underlying stuff that stem from it. If it is something you suffer from personally, this is not what this talk is about, but there's a lot of great resources out there. I definitely encourage you to spend some time thinking about it and spend some time researching it. So in order to overcome this mindset problem and to get into a place where we can have the difficult conversation, there's a few questions I want you to think about asking yourself that should help with that. The first question I want you to ask yourself is a little bit selfish on first glance, But that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes we're driven by our own raw emotions, and putting ourselves in a place of selfishness and self-protection is a great way to kickstart our actions. Why is it in my best interest to have this difficult conversation? Be a little bit selfish, be a little bit motivating for your own needs and your own desires. Sometimes that can help kickstart you and actually get you to do that thing. Next is to ask yourself why it's in the best interest of the person I'm having the difficult conversation with. So in the example over here about putting an idea forward, it might be in your best interest because you think it's the best idea. And it might also be in their best interest because you think it's the best idea. The answer can be the same for both. But it's worthwhile questioning if that is the case. If we're giving somebody performance feedback, it might be in their best interest because they want to grow, they want to develop, they want to become better. Or it might be in their best interest because they're on a performance development plan and they need to get better. So asking yourself why it's in their best interest is important. Then, especially if you're in a leadership position, it's worth casting that net a little bit wider and thinking about how this affects the wider team. So if I'm giving somebody performance feedback, it might be in the best interest of the team for me to give Jennifer performance feedback because whatever Jennifer does gives permission for the rest of the team to do, or it might be in the best interest of the rest of the team because whatever Jennifer does, people see that and they don't want to be in a team with somebody who does that. So if you're in a leadership position, definitely ask this question. If you're not in a leadership position, it can be a good practice to think about things from that level of altitude, to not just think about a one-on-one interpersonal relationship and start thinking about those dynamics outside of the team. And the last thing on mindset is to ask the question, what happens if I don't have it? This is back to my parking on the side of the Luxembourg highway. What happens if you don't have the difficult conversation? This is fear. What I'm trying to do with this question is to elicit a bit of fear. If being selfish hasn't worked with my first question, maybe being feared will work with this one, putting a bit of fear in there. What will happen if I don't have it? So these are some questions that are really geared towards, and I'm going a little bit quickly because we're going to go through some in-depth examples. So don't worry too much if I'm going a little bit quick. But these are questions that give us the courage to have the difficult conversation. So next we're going to go through preparation. How do we prepare for the difficult conversation? Now, you might ask, why? Why should I prepare? Surely I can just turn up and do it. And for those of us who've worked in consultancies and live our lives thinking on our feet, otherwise known as bullshit, might think, why do you need to prepare for these types of things? So what can happen during a difficult conversation that might be helped by better preparation? Question to the room. Spot on. You can think about objections. Exactly. That's definitely something that can happen. If you go into it, you might be quick and smart enough to handle those objections when they arise without preparation. Sometimes it's better just to prepare it beforehand. What else might happen? Yeah, exactly. Thinking through somebody's emotions, thinking through how they might react to something. It might not necessarily be an objection, but it might be a reaction that is something that you need to prepare for. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. So the point there was you're likely to be more confident going into it because that preparation, that gaining of domain knowledge, that gaining of context around the situation is going to make you more confident. Exactly. Definitely going to be the case. So I've prepared a few questions that's going to help you prepare. So gather data and outside opinions. This is exactly the point that was just made there. What's the data you can gather that'll make the difficult conversation go well? And what are the opinions you can gather that'll make it go well? And I separate those two things very, very clearly, because we need to be clear on what is data and what is opinion. We don't want to present something as data when it's an opinion. Gathering both of these things is important. Understanding the difference is even more so. If I'm giving somebody feedback about something, I don't want to give them feedback about opinions and present it as data. Why? Well, for two reasons. The first reason, I could be wrong. Second reason, it gives them the ability to kind of push back and say, well, that's not true. And it's really difficult to overcome those types of objections because you've started off in the wrong place. You've presented an opinion as fact. So it is important to gather both data and opinions, but separate them. Thinking through possible objections. This is definitely important. What objections could people raise to the thing you're discussing, and how do you overcome those objections? Having multiple plans.
Effect.
Which one? Sure. Okay. Of course. So I've just been asked to clarify this slide. So if we're giving somebody, I'll give a concrete example later, but I'll give something maybe a little bit more concrete now, just to help it solidify. And this is a perfect example of why you should interrupt me. So that was masterfully done. No. That's why that second slide is in there, is to encourage people to do exactly what you just did. So thank you. So if we're approaching giving somebody, say, performance feedback, then that performance feedback might be about how they did something. Now, if what they did was, say, write a particular piece of code and structure it in a particular way, there are parts of our job as engineers and architects of systems where the way you do something is right or wrong. There are other parts of what we do as engineers and architects where the way you do something is a matter of opinion. And so understanding the difference between those two circumstances is incredibly important. And being able to express to somebody, this is objectively the right way to do it, versus this is subjectively the way I think you should do it. It's really important to have those two separate in your mind so that you can express that to the person you're giving feedback to. Does that make a bit more sense? Perfect. Thank you for interrupting. Is that clear for everybody else before I move on? Perfect. Okay. Now, a question. So part of what I do as a job, I do public speaking as a job. Part of what I also do is I do training courses and seminars and that type of stuff. And I teach these skills for people in a classroom setting. And this question always gets asked without fail every single time I do these training courses. Isn't what we're talking about here just manipulating the other person? Well, yes, and. The fact is that skills such as what we're talking about this evening, these soft skills, little bit of a sideline. I don't like the term soft skills. The reason why I don't like it is a lot of these things are really hard. If you've got to give somebody negative feedback, it's hard. If you've got to let somebody go because their performance isn't good enough, it's hard. Calling it a soft skill, I think, really undermines the fact that this stuff is genuinely challenging, and it can be emotionally challenging, and it can be energy draining, and I would not call any of the leadership type skills and the consulting type skills soft skills, because they're not soft, they're hard. So I use the term core skills, because I use the term core skills because I think they're core of what we do. Everything we do as engineers, especially if you're a consultant, is predicated on these interpersonal skills with clients and the understanding of the dynamics with the client, and all of these communication influence skills. So they're not soft, they're core. Anyway, Tangent over. So I teach these skills, and people ask, isn't being a better communicator, isn't being a better influencer just manipulating the other person? My answer when that question's asked is it's not, because it depends on intent. It really depends on intent. If you're going into this, and I genuinely believe that most people are good at heart. Most people don't go to work thinking, aha, I'm going to screw John over today. Most people go into work thinking, I want to build a great product for great people, with great people, and have an amazing time doing it. And if you're assuming that about yourself, and you're assuming that about the people you work with, then trying to get them to see your side, trying to get them to understand why you think they should do the thing they should do, isn't manipulation. It's influence. If you're going to work thinking, I'm going to get John to do something that isn't in his best interests, that's manipulation. But I don't think that's what you're going to do. I don't think that's what 99.9% of humanity does. We go to work, we spend time with other humans, wanting to do a good job with good people. So if part of you was going, aren't I just learning to manipulate people? You're not. You're learning to help them be better, and you're learning to build better things with better people. Okay, so worksheet time. This is a follow-on at home, or follow-on in the room if you want to. I'm going to show, this is a link to a PDF worksheet. It is optional if you want to scan this and follow along. I will be doing it on the slide deck. This is also something you can take away with you. If you go past this slide and you don't end up scanning the QR code, there are plenty of opportunities for you to scan it later. So don't feel like you have to rush to get your phone out of your pocket and scan this QR code. Have I successfully vamped while people get their phone out of their pockets and scan this QR code? Brilliant. Okay, good. All right. So what this is a worksheet, and it's a 3-page PDF, and it effectively goes through all of the questions that I've just done in this presentation. It goes through the mindset questions, and it goes through the preparation questions. That allows you, next time you know you're going to have a difficult conversation, it allows you to prepare and get in the right mindset for it. I do this because I don't like talks and public speaking where somebody stands up on stage for 60 minutes and talks at you and doesn't give you anything to take away with you. Knowledge is not behavior change. And so everything that I do as a job, all of my training, all of my public speaking is geared on this one principle, which is knowledge is not behavior change. Talking at you for 60 minutes won't change your behavior. Giving you tools and techniques and algorithms and worksheets might. And so everything I do is prepared around this. So what is this worksheet? Let's just quickly go through it. The first few questions are about the logistics of a difficult conversation. So if you know that one is coming up, say you know you have to give somebody performance feedback, say you know you need to tell the client that you're behind schedule, say you know you need to speak to somebody about anything that is going to be high stakes and high emotions, the first page of the PDF is about logistics. What is this difficult conversation going to be about? Describe it as neutrally as you can. I say neutrally because I want to take your emotions out of this for the moment. I want you to think about it objectively as possible. The reason I do that is because it's going to help later with the mindset and preparation. If you're struggling to be objective about this difficult conversation, the best advice I can give you is imagine you were looking through a camera lens of the situation. Imagine it was a TV show, a reality TV show, and you're the cast. And you can't see what's in people's minds on TV. If for you on the live stream right now, you're looking at me literally through a camera. You don't know what's going on in my head. You can only see what's happening on the stage. And so that's the way I want you to think about describing what's happened or what's going to happen. Be as objective as possible. Who is going to be involved in this difficult conversation? the bare minimum number of people 99 times out of 100. Difficult conversations by nature should be the bare minimum to make it successful. We don't stand up on a stage in front of 100 people and tell somebody that their code sucks. We do it in a little bit more of a private situation. The last two questions on logistics are the when and the where. When should we do it? Again, 99 times out of 10, we have the conversation as quickly as possible because there is a very direct anti-correlation between the time between the action happened and the conversation and the effectiveness of having the conversation. The longer you wait, the worse the outcome is. Do you want me to go back to the QR code so you can scan the PDF? Would that be helpful? No? Okay. Cool. That's all right. So where is also the question of where's this going to be most productive? Generally in private. We don't do difficult conversations in public. So then the next couple of pages on the worksheet are the questions that I just took you through earlier. The mindset questions of my best interest, their best interest, the team's best interest, what happens if I don't do it, and then the preparation questions of data, evidence, opinions, all of that kind of stuff. So that the basic idea of this PDF is to take this talk that we've discussed and give you something that you can action and take away. So when you're having a difficult conversation, you can get this PDF out and you can fill it in to get you in the right mindset and to do the right preparation for having the difficult conversation. So let's go through a couple of examples. The first example, I just want to be conscious of time. So the first example that I could go through is kind of related to what you said of speaking to a project manager when we're running late on a project. The second example is speaking to an employee who has consistently played with their phone during meetings. So I think we've only got time to do one example this evening. So I'm going to ask you to people in the room. Sorry, people on the live stream, you don't get a vote in this. We're only going to have the people in the room voting. So hand up in the air with your fist closed for speaking to a project manager when we're running late, and fist open for people playing with their phone consistently. Closed for running late, open. It's pretty much 50-50. I need another couple of votes. All right, fist closed. So speaking to a project manager when we're running late on a project is the vote. Okay. So, what? Let me paint a scene for you. Let's say I'm a junior on a project and I've got a senior that's helping me out, but my senior is really busy. They've got multiple other projects they're working on, and I'm just stuck on this particular issue. I cannot get traction. I can't solve it myself. I need my senior's help, and my senior just doesn't have the time. Who's been in this situation as a junior in the past? Yeah, it happens all the time. So it's a very, very common circumstance. So there was a ticket that I was working on. When we did the story points, it was only meant to be about a day's work, and it's been a week. So I've spent way too much time on this, and I haven't told my project manager. I've just been saying, yeah, it's fine. She'll be all right. So it's now a week has passed, and I need to tell my project manager that I am vastly behind on this particular item. Anybody been behind on an item of work before? Yep, everybody. So this is something that happens all the time. So that's the what. So somebody's saying they've never done that. Oh, that's your manager. I've got it. Okay. So the what here, we describe this as neutrally as possible. Despite our feelings about the senior not helping us, we don't genuinely know what's going on. They could have more things that are more urgent and more important. And so when we're doing the what, We don't want to put any assumed intent on the senior's behavior. So I wouldn't be saying something like, my senior doesn't think I need help. My senior doesn't think. My senior thinks. These are not things that you can see through a camera lens. We think back to that. So all we can say is my senior hasn't spent the time that I need to finish off this item. That's an objective fact. This really helps when you end up having those conversations, because that's not something that people can object to. They can object to you assuming intent. If you say you didn't think my work was important enough to spend time, or if you say you weren't spending time with me because you don't like me, this is assumed intent, and they can just say, no, that's not the case. Whereas if you say, I wasn't getting the support that I needed to finish this, that is an objective fact. So this is why we try and have the what as objective as possible, because it's much harder for people to object to that. So who should be in this difficult conversation? Well, definitely the project manager. The reason we're thinking about this is because I'm running late on this item and I need to tell my project manager. And so definitely I should be in it, and my project manager should be in it. Should the senior be in it? Not at first. I would say it depends. Great engineering answer, it depends. Because if you don't feel comfortable having the senior in there, then don't have the senior in there. However, this is a great rule, a great golden rule of talking about other people. We never say something behind somebody's back that we haven't said to their face first. If you're going to have the senior in the room, go whole hog, say whatever you want, doesn't matter. Be an objective. If they're not going to be in the room, then we don't want to be talking behind their back unless we've said that to them first. Because we don't want to blindside them. We don't want them to hear secondhand that we've said something about them that we haven't said to them directly. So your choice if you want the senior in the room or not. But if they're not in the room, make sure that you've spoken to them first about what you're upset about and what you want to discuss. Yeah.
I find you mean seniors. That's something bad with me. I still got but then it's supervisor.
Yeah, exactly. So the point there was just to clarify my use of the word senior, and was to it was to say that the senior in the case of this person who is mentoring you and needs to give you the help to finish the item. Yeah, that's exactly what I meant. So when should we have this difficult conversation? Well, I'm already a week behind schedule. I should probably have it sooner rather than later. I don't want to wait another week. Again, golden rule, you have it as soon as you possibly can. The caveat with as soon as you possibly can is you don't really want to do this stuff on a Friday afternoon. You don't want to send people home with bad emotions, with conflicting emotions, with that kind of stuff. So we tend to not have difficult conversations on a Friday afternoon. If I'm going to tell you about your performance isn't good enough, and I do that at 4:30 on a Friday, I run the risk of you going home and spiraling over the weekend and not being in a good mental place and not being able to resolve that emotional state over the weekend and then spiraling and coming back on Monday. Whereas if I waited until Monday morning or Monday afternoon and had that with you, and you've got anything you want to clarify or come back or question, I'm there, I'm ready, I'm able to do that. So as soon as possible, caveat, not Friday afternoon. I did once have a boss. My boss rang me up at 3:30 on a Friday, telling me that I had to ring one of my employees and fire them. This was while a loved one was in hospital in emergency care. I left that job very soon after because my boss doing that showed disrespect for me and disrespect for the person he wanted me to fire. So never do this stuff on a Friday afternoon, or you'll probably find somebody ends up quitting. Okay, so now we're into the mindset of this circumstance. So why is it in my best interest to tell my project manager that I'm running late? We can think of a whole bunch of things. I probably feel really guilty that I'm running late on this item. I'm probably frustrated that I can't solve it. I'm probably looking forward to working on something new and different and interesting. I probably want to make sure that my team feel like I'm pulling the weight. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can pull in here for why it's in my best interest to tell the project manager I'm running late. I'm going to get the help I need. I'm going to work on something more interesting. Why is it in my project manager's best interest? Easy one. They're making assumptions about the project that are incorrect. They're planning, they're road mapping, they're projecting forwards, and they don't have the information they need to do that effectively. Easy. Why is it in the best interest of my team? Well, my team is planning their work based on what I'm going to get done. But also, again, trying to put this more higher altitude thought on this. I want to work in a team where we don't hide this stuff from each other. And I might feel a little bit guilty that I've hid the fact that I'm running late on this item from my team. And so me modeling the behavior that I want my rest of my team to exhibit is a great way of me encouraging the rest of my team to work in the same way. So again, this higher altitude thing, if you want to move into leadership, this is a great question to really start thinking about. What are these higher altitude ones? What happens if I don't have this conversation? Well, I'm not going to solve the ticket. I'm just going to keep getting stuck on it. And so, nothing is going to change until the project manager realizes that I'm way behind schedule and I can't fix it. And then it's just going to get worse. Preparation. What data evidence can I gather to back up my claims? Well, I can show the ticket, I can show the items, I can show what I have done to try and fix it and why that hasn't worked. What outside opinions can I gather? Well, I can, again, show what I tried to do, who I've spoken to, and why that hasn't worked. Possible objections. So the objections here could be things like the project manager saying to me, why haven't you told me this already? I've got to own up to that. There's nothing I can do there. I have to own up to that. Another possible objection might be the senior saying, oh, you haven't asked me for help often enough. So this can be something that by doing the preparation, I can actually say, I have reached out to you. I've reached out to you 4 times over Slack. I've tried to schedule a meeting. I've tried to do all of this stuff. So doing that preparation beforehand means that if they raise the objection of you haven't reached out often enough, I can then show the fact that I've done my best. Possible ways the conversation could go awry. I think here is unlikely to go awry, but if it was to go awry, it could be things like, the senior saying, oh, well, you're just not good enough to do it yourself. We would hope a senior wouldn't say something like that, but I'm sure we've all had experience of somebody saying something similar, and so thinking through the fact that that could be something that somebody could say, you can have that emotional processing and that planning beforehand, so that if they do say it in the moment, you can respond to it. Okay. Any questions on that particular example? Yes. It's a really great question. Let's take that offline, because you're right, it's not particularly related to this. So the question for the stream was the idea of bringing an advocate in for difficult conversations and conflict and stuff. Love that topic. If we've got enough time in the Q&A at the end, we will cover that. Sure. So the question there was, when you're going through the earlier process of why is it in my best interest, why is it in their best interest, why is it in the team best interest, how do you separate the facts and the opinions, the data and the opinions in that? Is that kind of the question? Sure. Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The assumptions. Understand what is objective and what is subjective. Like, be really clear to yourself if this is a fact or if this is an opinion, and make sure that you write it down in that way. So, the golden rule is that you never assume intent. So if you're thinking about it or writing about it in a way such as they think this or they feel this, and you're putting yourself in their mind in that case, that means it's not a fact, it's an opinion. So that golden rule of if you can see it through the camera lens, that's what I want you to think. If you can see it through the camera lens, it's data. If you can't see it through the camera lens, it's opinion. Any last questions before we start wrapping up? No, awesome. Okay, so I really genuinely, I've said this is the third time I'm going to say it. I want you to take this worksheet away. I want you to use it. This is how you're going to be better at difficult conversations. It's not the 60 minutes you spend with me this evening. This is not what makes you better, this time you're spending with me. It's using the tools and the techniques that we've talked about. It's a great question. I'll come to that in the Q&A at the end. I really want you to use this and action it, not just listen to me. Behavior change comes from action, not from knowledge. Lastly, back again, I want you to be confident. Hopefully everything we've talked about will make you confident in approaching these, not necessarily comfortable. That's the way that I want you to think about it. So, just as we're finishing, this is the new thing that I'm doing and what I'm trying to get some exposure on by doing this talk and talking to people. I'm building an online training course for emerging and aspiring technology leaders. It's going to be a completely self-paced online training course that'll teach you all of the skills that you need to be an effective technology leader. It's going to teach you to communicate better, to be a better influencer, to resolve conflict. And I'm planning on launching it in about August time. For coming this evening and listening to me talk, there'll be discounts available and things like that. But you can scan the QR code if you're interested. So what we're going to do now is we're going to transition into the Q&A side of things. For those of you on the stream, you can use the stream functionality. You can use the chat on YouTube or LinkedIn Live. For those of you in the room, we're going to transition and ask a few questions. But there's a few more links I want to share before we do that. The first link is my website, Debugging Leadership. The second link is another QR code to that worksheet. I told you it'd be there again if you missed it. The third link is this is the complete course of what we've done this evening. So you've attended a 45, 60-minute talk. I have put all of this and more examples into a free online course that you can just have and take away and use. This is my thank you for you coming to this evening. There is no strings attached to this. It is entirely and completely free. And the last thing is my LinkedIn profile. I do a lot of speaking on LinkedIn. I share content that I'm interested in. And I'd love for you to follow or connect with me on LinkedIn because it's how I like to talk about this kind of stuff. And I'm really passionate about it. I spend my entire days thinking about technology leadership and consulting as well, because it's something that just drives me. I love that interaction between software and people skills, because I think as an industry, it's an area we don't focus on enough. We promote our smartest, our best engineers into leadership positions and then sit back and watch as they fail, because we don't give them the skills to understand the difference between being a smart technologist and a good people leader. And I've made it my mission and my career to fix that. So we're going to transition to Q&A now. Do we have some questions on the stream?
We don't have any on stream just yet, so I think let's first
Sure. So the question there was about bringing an advocate into a difficult conversation. I think there can be huge value in that. If you're not confident, I think there can be huge value in it. What I would encourage, if you're going to do that, is go through this process with the advocate. Go through this worksheet with them, because they're going to ask you very similar questions to the questions that are on my PDF. They're going to want to know what was going on and why it was happening, and what the emotions were, and what the opinions were, and what the data is. And they're going to want to know why you want to do this thing. Why do you want to have this difficult conversation? So an advocate, if you're struggling with being confident in these situations, it can be a great tool. But I would say it's an additional thing to the types of questions, because that's going to help frame your conversation with the advocate. Sure. I'm not gonna repeat your question in exactly the words that you used. What do you do if you have not potentially acted in the best way, and you're not exactly sure what to do next? Would that... Sure, especially when the other person expects you to be an expert. I'm going to say something that is my view on consultancy, and apologies to Adam and the senior leadership at SSW if this is not their view. I want to be clear that this is my view. I genuinely don't believe clients engage consultancies because they want you to know more than they know. I think they engage consultancies because you've got smart people who can learn and execute quicker than they can learn and execute. And so not necessarily not knowing something, it's not always a problem. As long as you can say to them, that isn't something I know, but I know somebody who does, or I can go find that out, or that's not something that I can bring to mind straight away, but I know where I can get a resource to find the answer to that. There's another talk that I did that I can share with you, and the talk is literally called "The Power of Saying I Don't Know," and it's how that these three words, we're scared of saying them, especially as consultants. We don't want to say the words "I don't know," but there's huge power in saying them in the right way. And the talk is about how you say them in the right way, so that those words are not the end to the conversation, but they're the start of another conversation. It's how you use them to reposition it and be effective in doing so. I'll share that talk with you, but it's a 40-minute talk and I don't have 40 minutes. Any more questions?
So I'm definitely going to do the free course. I really found it's really insightful that I could picture so many situations that I've been in where I would have loved to have this information before I had those difficult conversations. But I also reckon you can use this in your personal life as well. I mean, we're focusing here, of course, on work, and this is a working environment. But I think there's a lot of difficult conversations that you have in your personal life where you can take all of these points and prepare for those conversations so that it doesn't turn into a massive argument, but rather a conversation. Yes, that's exactly what we want. We don't want it to turn into an argument, because then, well, it's not a conversation anymore, and then it's just bad things are being said, right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. A lot of these skills that I teach, being a better communicator, resolving conflict, doing difficult conversations, I teach them in the context of work, because frankly, it's mostly the companies that pay me, and the companies have the money. But you're right in that all of these skills are just as important in our personal lives. If we learn to be a better communicator, then our friends and our relationships and our loved ones, we become better communicators with them too. Yeah. If we learn how to resolve conflict, those conflicts don't have to be work conflicts. They don't have to be conflicts about the project you're working on or the client you're working with. It can be a conflict about who's going to take the bins out or who's going to take the kids to school. Like these skills are the same skills. And in some ways, especially difficult conversations, thinking back to our definition of what they are, high stakes and high emotions, your personal lives potentially have higher stakes and higher emotions than what you do at work. Yeah. So the question was, often people have different ways of being convinced of an argument. You know, as engineers, we tend towards logic and data. As a broad stroke across our industry, that's what we do. But that the same is not always true of other people. And so, you know, you can often end up in these circumstances where, as an engineer, we default to our way of influencing, which cannot work for somebody else. The trick there is a few things. The first thing is actually listening to somebody. If you listen to the way that they try to convince you of something, that's often an indicator of the way that they are most influenced. So if you're talking to somebody and they're trying to convince you of something and they're using emotional arguments, then they probably will be mostly influenced by emotional arguments. If they're trying to convince you of something and they're calling to authority and they're saying, this is what Microsoft does, this is what Amazon does, then when you try and influence them, you should use the same. You should try and use call to authorities. So that's the first thing, is to listen to them. The second thing is to speak to other people and ask them questions. Hey, have you worked with Jessica? Hey, have you worked with Jonathan? You know, what have you found has worked with them? And as with all of these skills, when you first start doing it, it's going to be really cognitive. It's going to be really hard and sloggy, and it's going to feel like you're crawling through the quagmire through honey to do this. Because it's any skill, the first time you do it is hard. Has anybody learned to drive a manual car? Yeah? So first time you get in a manual car, oh my God, you've got the clutch to deal with, you've got the handbrake to deal with, you've got the accelerator, you've got the gear stick, you've got all of these things that you have to kind of handle and judge and get absolutely perfect in order to drive. And the first time you do it, you're stalling the car, you're accelerating away and crashing into a brick wall, ask me how I know, and you're really not doing well. 2 years later, you're just getting in the car and driving off. And it's the same with all of these skills. These, again, this is why I don't like calling them soft skills, because they're hard, especially when you start practicing. The more you practice, the better you become, the more natural they become, the less they become a cognitive exercise that you work your way through, and then more they become an instinctual thing that you do without thinking.
Cool. That all the questions? Oh, that's one now. Yes.
Sure. So for the benefit of the stream, the question there is, how do you handle situations where there isn't an objective opinion of something, and it is somebody's subjective opinion, and maybe you've even been thrown under the bus by somebody's subjective opinion. They're really tricky circumstances, and I genuinely hope you just don't end up in them, because they suck. And it's really, really hard to be in those places and to come out on the other side in a positive way, because you're going to, and again, I'm sorry, this sucks, but you're going to upset somebody. You're either going to upset your boss, or you're going to upset the people that your boss has influence over, because you're going to have to say to somebody that what somebody else said wasn't true. There is no outcome on this that is going to be perfect. Somebody is going to get their feelings hurt, and hopefully that's not you, because if you don't do anything, it will be you. The only thing you can do is to do something, and to, you know, my general rule with influence is you never influence a group, you only influence individuals. And so what I would say there is, if you're not somebody who has the confidence, if you're not somebody who has the skill, the practice to deal with that circumstance in the moment, then just say, I'm not comfortable with this, and leave it at that. Make sure you've said something, and then you can speak to individuals later to resolve that, and to talk and say, that wasn't what I said. But casting back to what I said with the senior example, the general rule, the golden rule with talking about somebody behind their back is everything we've said behind somebody's back, we've said to their face first. So if you're going to say something about your boss to somebody else, you've said that same thing to your boss first. So the first person you speak to is your boss, and you tell them in private, I was not comfortable with that. I did not believe that that's what you're going to say. And then when you then say other people, your boss can never say, you know, you shouldn't have said that behind my back, yada, 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 because you said it to their face first. That's it.
That's it. Awesome. Well, we spoke about the rewards app earlier on. So this is the time where you take out your phone and you open up the rewards app. We're going to put the QR code on the screen any moment now. Once you scan that code, we'll ask you for a little bit of feedback. And then after that, you will already get 500 points towards your first, I guess, prize. So while we leave it on there, Andrew, that was awesome. Thank you so much. That's definitely. Yeah, thanks for sharing that talk with us tonight. I'm definitely going to do that course, and I think that will help anybody in any situation. You know, it doesn't matter what position you're in. You're always going to have difficult conversations. That is life. But if we can better prepare for them, that would be awesome. And thank you for your help.
You're welcome.
That's great. Thanks. I think that is it for tonight. Thank you very much for coming tonight, our people that came into the office and all of you online. I'm Gert Marks for SSW TV. We'll see you next time. Thank you.